for coming out on a beautiful sunny day. We're going to sit inside here for just a little bit. We're going to hear Tonya, Turner, Carroll, and Virgil talk about Virgil's world, and in particular, all the great big connections that exist between the land, the place that we're standing on right now, and the future. I couldn't be happier to have everybody in here. It's an insane honor. The show is beautiful. The vision of Virgil, we just kind of turned his face over. But it was a real honor to be able to do that. And we've got a crew from PBS here as well, and PBS stuff, making a documentary about Virgil. So at this point, we will turn it over to Tonya and Virgil. Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys all for being here. I'm sorry that we ran out of chairs, but I can assure you that it'll be well worth standing. And if anybody wants a better view, upstairs we have kind of a great view looking down. And if anyone really needs a seat, please don't be shy. I'm very happy to give up this stool. I can stand. So if anyone has back issues or really needs it, please raise your hand and I'll bring it over to you. Okay, so I think we're going to get started right away talking about why Virgil's work is so important to our world. Michael and I first met Virgil about a year ago, and although it seems like a very short time, we have had an incredible education since we met him, and we set out on a journey to learn about Virgil's mission, which is to educate the world about the 1680 Pueblo Revolt. And it is truly a tragedy that the Pueblo Revolt is not included in a lot of textbooks. And so the more that we can talk about it and let people know the truth about what really happened, the better. So you'll hear a little bit about that today as we go through our talk. But I'd like to get started with one of the most interesting parts of Virgil's world that we've learned about in the process of doing this exhibition, and that's the idea of slipstream and that concept of time. So I'm going to be asking Virgil some questions. He has some images to share with us, and at the end you'll all be able to ask him questions, and then we have the reception afterwards, so you don't have to worry, you'll have a long time to talk to Virgil. So Virgil, I'd first like to ask you, how does your relationship with clay as a material work in tandem with concepts of slipstream and past, present, and future time being experienced simultaneously?
Can you repeat it? I'm just kidding. No, I mean, like growing up in a family of potters, my mother, Virgil Ortiz, side of the family, clay has always been around us all the time. So it was completely, we would wake up, my siblings and I'm the youngest of 6 kids. And every time we get up from getting ready to go to school, our mom would already be working on the dining room table, which was her studio. So I had no idea that what our family did was create art. I thought everybody made pottery. It wasn't until I went to school and I figured I was like, okay, like everybody's coming back home and playing outside, and I would go in and like draw or create with clay and all. And I found out that it was art that we're creating. And like that is like, I feel like there's 2 reasons why I'm here on Earth, is to make sure that this tradition of making Coche de Pueblo pottery using traditional methods and materials, really old school way, it takes a long time to do this, and it's a dying art form right now because several families that do make pottery, they have kids, they grew up, they moved out of Coche de, and they just don't have the time to do it because I was lucky that I did it since I was like 6 years old, and being able to work with my mom. I was the last one to fly the coop, so I was with her all the time. And I took the clay taught me everything. It was my protector, it saved my life, art saved my life, and provides therapy, so I don't have to pay for therapy, but it's just, I mean, I use it in different ways, but like to figure out a way of how to make sure that it gets passed on to the next generation. I wanted to find out, figure out a way of how do I do this? How do I include or get the kids interested in working with clay? And it's hard to do that if you don't have flashy images and all. So the second part I feel that I'm here is to educate globally about the Pueblo Revolt, because it's not taught in schools, left under the carpet because of the genocide that happened to our pueblos. And it's quite embarrassing when I do shows in Milan or RTA in Paris or Amsterdam. All these European cities, all the people there, they know our history, American history, more than Americans do. So like when I do shows in metro cities in LA or New York, it's they still don't know. They're like, "What part of Mexico are you from?" So it's just, and then when I do shows here where most of the Pueblo Revolt took place, they still don't know about it. So that's my life's mission, is to make sure to get that message across and have the world know and acknowledge our existence, our history, using art. But back to what your question was about, is like, how do I working in the idea of slipstream or futurism, is like, I seen the Star Wars movie when I was like 6 years old, and it was during Indian Market time. We're up here, so we walked down to the Vargas Center and my cousins and I would go check it out. And like, after seeing that movie, I was only 6 or 7 then, and it was insane because I learned all the characters. I loved how they dressed, like every aspect to all these characters. And I said, okay, this like affected me highly as a kid. So I said, I'm going to write a movie script about the Pueblo Revolt and happening and simultaneously in 3 different time dimensions, and historic times when it took place, and the present, and also the year 2180 in the future. And that allowed me, because I'm not an academic person at all, so I wanted to really create these characters, and I designed specifically 19 groups of characters that represent the 19 pueblos that are left in New Mexico today. And doing shows and exhibitions at galleries or museums, I release like a character maybe every 2 years and really try to develop them fully. So when I'm doing shows in different museums, like we just got back from the Autry, and those characters that we released were the Sirens and Sekas. So I have to develop them, and that helps me protect my intellectual property as well. So every show that I work with, the more we develop them, the more images we use. We put them up everywhere, the catalogs and magazines, whatever. So we go to the intellectual property lawyers and file them as seasons as well. So I'm working very slowly, and I've been doing this for over 22 years now. So it's kind of funny how it all comes together. But it's the characters are us in the future. But what they're doing is the recon watchmen are coming back from 2180, these pieces behind you, and they're coming to the present time and the historic times. And what they're doing is they're collecting all of our language, our ceremonies, our dances, our way of life in the Pueblo, getting all our pottery designs, taking them back to 2180, protecting them and storing them so that when we get to that timeline, we still have everything intact, our language is still there, and our dances or ceremonies. So this is what my mission is, and I found a way how to do it using art, and then having fantastic images or characters like this allows me to go into social media and create really sci-fi looking pieces, and then that's what catches the eye of the younger generation. So they're scrolling on Instagram and they're able to look at what I'm doing and read about it and get a lesson in history.
Can you talk a little bit about how you gather the clay and the connection with your ancestors as you gather the clay, and what that process is like?
Yeah, totally. Like I mentioned earlier, I grew up in a potters on my mom's side, so we always would go to the same clay vein to go collect our traditional clay. And using this process, it takes a whole year to gather the clay. Comes out of the earth. Before we dig, we have to introduce ourselves, state our purpose, ask for guidance and exactly how our parents taught us when we were growing up. So we respect the clay, the earth mother, so much, and like when we're making the clay, we're really protective of it. We don't waste anything. So when we start digging into the clay mother, then it comes out, it's still damp, and it comes, our clay color is red, and it comes out very damp, and it's like, you have to process this clay, let it dry over a whole year till it's bone dry. Because if you try to soak these pieces as soon as you get it out of the clay vein, it's so dense it will not dissolve. So when you mix it with the clay temper, which is the pumice and the volcanic ash, it will still have pure clumps of clay in it, and that will cause cracking or explosions when you're firing it. So the whole time we're praying, and like, you know, like, yeah, it's funny.
Literally, literally and spiritually.
Yeah, and like, I mean, we go to the clay mountain to get that, haul it back down to the trucks, take it and store it in our barn for a whole year. And we go to another part of the pueblo to get the volcanic ash, which is all white. That comes out pure in pure chunks as well, and take it home. I put out a canvas, throw on my combat boots, stomp on them, and signals going out on the images. So we just stomp on that, and it crushes down really fine. And once the clay is ready to be mixed, we have to crack the clay into like 1/4-inch pieces, the sizes, and then slowly just rehydrate it. So we have a plastic bin next to us, and we crush it. I just have like an old coffee can with a metal bar. Crush it up, do layers, and then add water. Then it slowly rehydrates even. So once it's been soaking for about a week or two, it pulls away from the plastic bin, and it's saying the clay is ready to be mixed now. So now that the temper and the clay has been processed and ready to go, then we start mixing it. And what our mom had taught us, and our grandmothers too, is to always save a little piece of clay from the previous clay ball. So you save that little tiny piece, and then you mix it into the next clay ball, and just keep going, and it's like a prayer so it won't die out. So there's a lot of special lessons, and like when I'm always by myself, when I'm in my studio, usually I'm a night owl, so I'll be working all night, but just working with the clay, you feel all your ancestors, your family members that have moved on to the next level, and they're like talking to you, and it's like I said, it provides therapy, and it saved my life. So I know I'm walking in the same footsteps that they did, not only by going to the clay mountain and getting it, but also using the same clay vein for who knows how long.
And I love how you take your young nephews and nieces with you on that journey to gather the clay. And to me, the imagery that you're making, sort of the exciting imagery, you know, characters coming back from 2180, it really helps to engage them, to ensure that the tradition of your family continues into the future. So you're literally making a story about your past ancestors, and you're creating archetypal characters from the future that come back and help them, but you're doing that same thing in your own life, in real life, with your own relatives.
Having 47 great nieces and nephews helps. We just had one born like maybe a week and a half ago. Down in, she lives down in Texas, but it's just kind of cool because I have the older nieces and nephews that are like maybe 6 years younger than I am, all the way to brand new. So it's like they're good guinea pigs to test on, so, and they know more about tech than I do, so they really, yeah, it's just testing with them. And it's also just kind of remembering how our dad and our mom would be in Severina, and our grandmothers and all our cousins, like remembering how we all went to the mountains to gather the clay. And I try to take my family and other Pueblo members that are interested in working with the traditional clay with me, and to show them where we get it, how we process it, and I mean, most of them, I mean, they're really excited to learn, but then once we go through the process, they're like, this is too much time. Yeah, it's just like, you don't, I mean, that's what most people, they have the best intentions, but all of a sudden, it's just the time that people don't have.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that I've been doing it since I was a kid, and I was in gallery since I was like 16, so I was able to make a life of working with art.
And you won your first Indian Market prize at age 14.
I don't remember.
Yeah, that's what it says in the book. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about the oppressive colonial forces that came and caused this genocide against the Pueblo people, because for me, this idea of linear time is almost another example of oppression. Because whereas in your culture, you've always had this connection with the ancestors and your belief that you can affect a different reality and that you're just one bead in the necklace, right? And so the imposition of linear time, where you have a starting point and you're trying to get to some successful goal point that is a straight line rather than a circle, to me feels like another example of that kind of oppression and trying to eradicate Pueblo culture. So I love it that you are presenting the idea of cyclical time and slipstream to people who might not have ever heard about it or even have their minds open to that concept of a way that time exists. And that can really help everyone, whether they are from a Pueblo culture or whatever their culture is, have an appreciation for their own heritage and how they can improve society through their own actions as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm so lucky to be born into this family and to be born in Santa Fe but raised in Cochiti. And just have, I mean, Cochiti is one of the smallest pueblos, but to be able to participate and like be with the people, it's like a huge family. So it's like whether we're celebrating a new birth or death, we're all supporting each other, so it's a big family. And it's like all the stories that we do get and like how we have our ceremonies, it's in the kiva is like all the knowledge that's passed down to us. Our language is not written, so it's you just have to learn it by being there. But it's just an amazing thing to be able to touch the same clay. And like when I visit some historical pieces, like to see and feel the older works is just amazing. You can feel that they're alive, and they're like my kids as well. So I'm finally understanding that now.
Can you say a few words about Herman Agoyo and the sort of his passing the baton?
Yeah.
To you to tell the story of the Pueblo Revolt and how he kind of held that baton for a long time?
Yeah, definitely. Do you guys know Herman Agoyo? He's had a couple of books out, and he's out of Wingate Pueblo, and I believe he passed maybe 6 years ago. But Herman would always, he's married to a woman from Cochiti, Rachel Agoyo. So it turns out my manager for now 22 years, I think, Tisha Agoyo, she's my cousin, and she's half Cochiti and half Wingate Pueblo, which was San Juan Pueblo, but he was the leading and spearheading the education about the Pueblo Revolt. He led to raise money to get a statue of Pope into the statuary hall, and that was New Mexico's last statue to get in there. So like we're a part of that, and like always would love to hear what he would have to say about the revolt, because there's not a lot written about it, or no photographs and all that. But for him to listen to him at his lectures, and I started to pick it up and like really dive into it, and then my point of view of like how to educate using art, he paid attention to that. So when he was in the hospital, and he just said like, I love what you're doing, and you're reaching a new generation of people. So I want you to just keep on and doing your best. Getting over, sorry, but you can feel it too. But of how somebody like that entrusted myself and Tish to go forward and bring this message to everybody, and also celebrate it too.
So back to Star Wars now. You talked about your fascination with Star Wars as a child, and how you would be, I might be sort of exaggerating, but like hiding under the table at Indian Market in your family's booth, and then you'd walk down to the Vargas Mall and watch the latest Star Wars, and that that impact of that, like the incredible awe that you felt. You wanted to replicate that with younger generations and inspire that kind of awe in them.
Oh,
And one thing that I kind of am baffled by is, or that I think we can work on, is that, you've got, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, and they're fictional characters, right? And they're everybody all over the world, every kid, every adult. They know who those people are. They know Star Wars, right? And the fact that that the characters in the actual true story event of the 1680 Pueblo Revolt are much more fascinating than Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. You've got Pope and Katua and Umtua, but yet people have no clue who those people are. And so I think that the future of your story can be enormous, and I hope that their names will also become known in every household all over the world too. So can you tell us a little bit about what your plans are to make sure that happens?
yeah, definitely. Like knowing that I was supposed to be able to help educate about it, like with Herman and Goyo, and also all our other the elders in the pueblos. I mean, at first they're like, what are you doing, like all these different sci-fi or like alien characters and all? And then I showed them like exactly, I was like, man, like how do I reach the next generation? How am I gonna do this? And I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna write a movie script about it. So again, I've been working on this for like the past 22 years. And it's kind of cool to be able to really dive into it and like start creating superheroes for my nieces and nephews. And that's where you see all the sci-fi characters coming into play. And the leader of the Pueblo Revolt, Pope, he was the one that devised the plan, but I wanted to express like what I see in the Pueblos, and especially in our Cochiti Pueblo, and like our moms, our grandmothers, my sisters, my aunts, how much of the Pueblo they are a part of, and like they run things, like women run things. So I just wanted to like build a whole storyline on women empowerment.
And that's what I love, like this figure here, Tau. She is my personal favorite of the archetypes, and I love that you basically are bringing her back from the future. Is that right? But she has a past name.
Yeah, her name is Tau, and that's what you hear when we're gathered at the Pueblo, like for feast days. Like, so you hear all the grandmothers calling all the granddaughters, Tau, come here, and they call each other the same thing. So you constantly hear that name, and I was like, okay, that's like a perfect name for the female heroine. So it's like, that would be, she's the leader of the Blind Archers now. And she's, the backbone behind Pope, so it's just kind of cool to incorporate that for my nieces.
Wait, so tell us about the story of the Blind Archers.
So how I wrote, she's one of the first characters that I released after Pope, so her story, this is what I wrote, it didn't happen, but to think of how you could really get a movie going. So it's just like, here's all these little kids practicing archery with their grandmothers. So they're all ace archers with their grandmothers, and the invaders first come to the Pueblo and see how good of archers they are. And they challenge them to an archery contest, and the little girls kick their butts. And in turn, they blind all the little kids, all the little girls. So once they continued training as archers, and by the time 1680 came around for the revolt, they all rise up at 18 years old, and they have now learned to see through their fear, even though they're blind, and they're still archers. So that's their superhero power, and then like they're all following Tau, which is the leader of the Blind Archers.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for giving little girls and women like the power that, or someone that represents the power that they have, so that they can see that mirror back at them.
Yeah, it's funny how it all works like this, just to develop the characters. Like I was mentioning earlier, how different characters throughout all the different shows, but I let the art influence real life. So some of the models that I do work with are from just friends. They're not actually models, but creating pieces in clay to later dress up the model. I do all the sewing myself. I create all the costumes and body paint them. I photograph them, take them into Photoshop and try to develop them as much as possible. Otherwise, I would just really create on my friends' bodies and then later make caricatures of them in clay. So you'll start to see all these different types of pots of how I use it as a canvas to develop the characters. And again, some of these are in museums, so then it just helps with intellectual property, trademarking, and all that stuff that goes with it.
What about the Recon Watchmen? You mentioned them before, but they are, can you tell us a little bit about them and why Tao brought them back to 1680 and how they go back and forth between times?
They travel through, coming from time traveling and time jumping. So they're from the future and they connected with Tao, and Tao remembers when she was in 1680. But she's now found the Recon Watchmen. They have armor, they have all these special ships and all these weapons to be able to fight the Faux Revolt in the future. So now, like through Slipstream and through time jumping, they come back to 1680. She brings them into the kivas where Pope and all the Pobos are meeting. So they're kind of seeing themselves in the future. So there's 1680 Tao waiting in the kiva with Pope, and then here comes 2180 coming through wormholes. So she was like, this is what's going to happen, we can help you. So they're time jumping back and forth. So it's just kind of cool. Like, I mean, it sounds a bit weird, but that's what ADHD helps. So we're never bored, right? And it's just funny. A quick story. Like when we had dinner one time, I brought one of my friends, Alex Sokol. He's out of Chicago, and he does all the augmented reality and a lot of the projections with us. We're really working with AI, right? And I just met him over Instagram, and I asked, I loved his video, and it turned out he was singing. I was like, that's you singing, and he created he's a musician, a vocalist, and it turns out he performs with a Blue Man group out in Chicago. So it's kind of cool, and then it felt like we already known each other, like Slipstream or something, right? So he was out here, and then he came to feel like the energy of like where the hangings, all the torture went in, like on the plaza. So he understood it, and it's nice, almost feeling like you have two brains. We understand each other like that. Sometimes we don't even have to talk to each other; we just get it, and it's just incredible to have somebody like that on the team. But I forgot what the question was.
But you reminded me of something else. Speaking of the ADHD brain and Slipstream and synergistic relationships. So, can you say a little bit about how we came to have in this exhibition this enormous head of Pope that is sculpted?
That happened when I was really tired and I was just doom scrolling, and I seen this artist named Steve Farah on Instagram, and I had watched his YouTube tutorials. I went to YouTube University and learned how to create all my action figures, with resin and with plastics. So I was able to create molds using all these types of new materials. And then another thing that he helped his wife with was with needle felting with wool. And he created smaller figures like this. So he was generous enough to share his knowledge with me of how, what foam to use, all the needle sizes, the wool, sourcing materials for it. And of course I went super size, and I should not have, but after the fact, Ren, the model who plays Pope, he helped me do it, and my other friend Daniel Casas out of Valkyrie. So they would come and coach it, and it's if you look at it closely, you can see thousands and thousands of just needle poking. Luckily it was red because we stabbed ourselves a lot. But it was so tedious, and I was like, oh no, we're gonna finish it in time. And I told Jeffrey, Jeffrey, where is he? Yeah, and I said, I don't know if we're gonna finish it, but I have another piece that I replaced it. He was like, wait, what? But we did it till last minute and we got it done. But it's so cool to have another medium to work in, and my plan is to have all the characters done at that size. So when we get a huge museum show, you'll see the characters have been larger than life, and then doing them in bronze and metal.
So speaking of museum shows, you have a whole slew of them coming up this year. In October, the Lowe Museum will open a giant solo show of your work. How many square feet?
I think it's over 6,000
Yeah.
square feet. So
Yeah, and that'll coincide with Art Basel Miami week, and it'll open in October, but that'll continue through the beginning of the year. And then you have a museum exhibition in North Carolina,
at the Hickory Museum, yeah.
and a fashion show at the Getty in September, and a current solo show up now at the Autry.
We're not busy.
Yeah. So with all that in mind, like what is next? Okay, so for this show, you introduced this giant felted concept for the first time. What are the new things you're going to introduce, like at the Lowe or?
I mean, sometimes it just comes at the last minute, but like a lot of the things that we're working on. Alex, can you come up here? I mean, I just want you to meet, to show people who he is, but he's what we're doing right now is like, it's incredible to work with him because all the video footage, like I shoot, sometimes I don't even know, like I have an idea of these characters, so White Sands, Misty Badlands, and Cochiti, everywhere that I would imagine these characters would reside in, and do filming and just like direct them to do different things, and later on it's going to fit into the movie scene somehow, magically, but and all the photography, getting them the stills, like doing the video clips, and then he showed me, and now is training, and like we're working together of how to take it into AI. So we're saving a lot of money. We don't have to rent like helicopters, or we don't have to go fly over a volcano, or all these different things.
Yeah, it's incredible to be. It's an honor to work with someone like Virgil, who has such a huge vision, and I do think that using the modern technology with these ancient technologies can just kind of do what the story is doing in a certain way, where it's living in multiple time periods. And I do think that Virgil has such a strong vision that everything that's source material from him, whether it be video or photography, it's almost like once it gets into the AI, it knows where to go, and we kind of guide it. So it's really nice to have surprising technology too that takes it in directions that can in turn inspire you to go somewhere where you didn't think possible. So.
Yeah, but needless to say, we don't sleep. It's really cool though, because like now you get to see even all these really, like I don't know if you guys went to the Vortex party last night. So we released a lot of the imagery and a lot of the footage that we have. So it's really like helping us create all the storyboards for the film. So it's again saving us a ton of money to just be able to take an existing footage that I do have, shoot a little bit of the new ones, AR it, AI it, and then we could really tell it the prompt. And a lot of people are afraid of working with AI, but if you're able to, I'd say collaborating with it, but it's you're basically collaborating with a smarter you. I don't know how to say that, but because you're feeding it the prompts, and then the more you feed it, you can develop that scene more and more. But it's just like you're collaborating with yourself in a digital way. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but yeah, if you're not afraid to work with it, and you really like all the imagery that you see all over, like on the doors, right there. They're my photography that I take pictures of the models, and then we create the backgrounds with using AI, and then I tear it all up in Photoshop. So all the costumes, all the paint, the body paint is real. A lot of the backdrops, we go to like Misty Badlands or Tent Rocks, that looks surreal to begin with. So you can't, I mean, it's just working with AI back and forth.
So I realized, I don't know if we actually told everyone here the story of Pope's revolt. So we might want to just do a little synopsis there of Pope and Katwa and Ontua. Do you want to just in a nutshell tell me what happened?
Sure, like I mean,
courts.
Yeah, well, how he devised the plan was that the base plan was that he would send runners from the northern pueblos to the southern pueblos, and he gave them knot at courts, and the same amount of knots in each court, and he instructed them to stop at each pueblo and give the leaders a knot at court, and told them to untie one knot every morning. So when the last knot was untied, those certain the leaders of each pueblo had the entire pueblo rise up and push out the invaders. So it's America's first revolution that people don't call it because of the genocide and the bloodshed, the atrocities that happened. So.
And some of the atrocities were one Pueblo revolt. The Spanish found out that the revolt was going to happen one day too early, right?
Yeah, it was in Tesuque, that's where Onto and Catawa are from.
And they were runners.
They were runners, and they got caught, and they were imprisoned and tortured, and I mean they're the first ones to give their lives to the Pueblo revolt. So a lot of the characters that you see in here is like really depicting our ancestors that went through all of this, and if it wasn't for them, who knows, the Pueblos would not be here.
Yeah. And you can see a lot of imagery of Catawa and Ontua, the runners, on the second floor on that wall. And one other thing I wanted to ask you is, or I wanted to mention first and then ask, is that when I was at the Autry opening for your work, and I went into the gift shop and I was looking for a good book on the Pueblo Revolt, and I knew they would have one because they have an amazing bookstore, gift shop that has a lot of great books. And I was talking to the person who orders the books for the gift shop, and I said, wow, I could only find 2 books online, and they were both written by people who were not Native American people. And she said, I know, I have the same problem. So I had to order one of those. That's the only book about the Pueblo Revolt that we have in our gift shop, when Virgil's entire show is about the Pueblo Revolt in their museum. And so I'd like to ask you, is there anything that any of us here that are hearing the story and hearing you talk about your mission, is there anything that we can do to help increase the knowledge of the Pueblo Revolt? Is there anything you can think of that we could do?
Well, I just think just talking about it and acknowledging it helps a lot. And like we both know, there's not a lot written about it. I have a book called Revolution that's available down at our showroom at JJ Necessities next to Orno Restaurant, but
On Marcy Street.
On Marcy Street, and it's like, I mean, you guys showing up here and like hearing this little conversation, it helps a lot too, to spread the word and to dig in and like, check it out and see if you can find anything on the internet. But it helps too.
And buy the books, buy the 2 books that are out there about it, and so that more books will be written about it, and that bookstores will order more copies of the book, and that maybe Herman Agoyo's book, he wrote the definitive book about the Pueblo Revolt. You can't find it anywhere, it's out of print. So maybe his book will be reprinted if enough people start reading about the Pueblo Revolt. Buy the books for your kids, demand that their school teachers include it in the curriculum, and make sure people know about it, because it's really amazing. When you go to museum exhibitions of Virgil's work, half the people who are interested in the artwork don't already know the story of the Pueblo Revolt. They're learning about it for the first time.
Definitely. I mean, like these samples that I'm showing you are a bunch of the characters that I developed. Again, like taking photographs of them and really putting them into a movie kind of world and designing the looks of them. These were the gliders and runners that just, they were up at the History Colorado Center in Denver, and they were up and on display for over a year and a couple of months, but that just first came down at, just in July. But this was the first show that I really incorporated augmented reality into it. So we had these really like 10-foot tall photographs there was 5 of them in the whole exhibition. So I worked with one of my other friends, Sebastian Bustos, that's when I first started really getting into augmented reality. So you see these really huge photographs, and they're really cool just to look at by themselves, but they have a QR code in their little title on the side. And once you scan the QR code, then it takes you to Instagram. And it works through Instagram, so all of the photographs will come alive. Like this one had flames coming down, like kind of like raining or snowing flames. Others had like the cover of the catalog actually has a pope that comes out of it and like rotates so you can see the whole piece. And that was really appealing to me because like people that can't see the shows in person, they could now start seeing them in augmented reality and see pieces like that. So that was my intention, to really push that. And like again, working with Alex and Sebastian, like it's very helpful.
And on that note, if anybody knows like groups who would like to come, and like adults, children, whatever, who would like to come and see this exhibition, we're always open to having people come and talking about it so that we can educate people in that way as well about the proposal. And now I think we should let people ask questions.
Yeah, let me just introduce two people. Jonathan Sanchez is a collaborator that I did. I met him when he was had an internship at the Santa Fe Institute of Art, and I only knew him for like 1 week, and I went to his studio and he was packing it up, but he makes handmade paper. And I was like, man, this is like, I loved his aesthetic right away, and I said, we have to collaborate on something. And he is from Cuba, but resides in Brooklyn, and you'll see some of the works that we have in here with the paperwork that we both did. But this is Jonathan.
Yeah, I think it was a great opportunity to collaborate and basically create like an intersection between ceramics and paper making and all the similar processes that come about. And I think it was also important to engage materially with a lot of not only the histories of colonial extraction, but also the histories of violence materially. And we kind of like thought about making something with only like natural materials. And I think that paper making allowed us to do that when like choosing like specific dyes to dye the pulp, and even like the process of casting like the masks out of very specific fibers and not using any synthetic dyes to create them. I think it was a very important thing in relation to the greater scheme of this exhibition and the theme of the revolt, which I think is important also in my practice to kind of like think about resilience and the power of art to create moments of resilience and to create those moments of meditation within like the memories of all these histories, right, that get erased within either governments or historical events. So I think it was a very powerful collaboration. I'm very excited to see how the work develops over time.
And our backgrounds are very similar.
Exactly.
What our people went through, so that's kind of cool to explain it through the artwork.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Questions? Can we do questions now?
Sure.
Okay. If anybody has a question, raise your hand and we'll bring you the microphone so you can ask it. Okay. Can you do the microphone handed out?
Hi, is anyone able to hear me? I'm back here. I just wanted to start by saying I'm a big fan of your work. I actually direct my parents here. I know it looks like the reverse, but ever since I did a project in our history class that involved studying your work and the universe that encompasses your work, I've really enjoyed like looking at your work on the internet and in exhibitions. And I was very happy to have a chance to hear you talk. I guess my question concerns, I understand the great help that technology, I understand the usage of technology is extremely helpful for outreach, especially younger generations, but specifically generative AI technology has proven to be somewhat controversial among younger people and younger artists specifically. Do you worry that your use of generative AI tools could possibly hinder those outreach efforts?
I think if you just work with it and you get comfortable, and the more, like I'm lucky because I get to do shows in museums and galleries, so then like we're able to capture the intellectual property and the copyrights of it and the trademarks. So you could just look at it in different ways, but if you're ahead of it a little bit in that way, that helps a lot too. And then like some of these different companies that do have these programs out, you could actually work with them that really get to know these owners of the company, and like they're willing to help as well to make sure that it doesn't get out of control. But like millions of people are feeding the big brain every day, so I mean it's always growing. So eventually, probably, of course, they'll like the word blind archer might produce, like one of my characters. But I mean, but by that time, we already have the next show going, the movie's already in production. So, I mean, the more, and I look at it a way like the more people could see it and find it, the better we have a chance at educating more people.
Couple of questions. Slipstream concept is a cultural concept in the Pueblo world.
I mean, it is like all the, like living in there and like always talking to our ancestors with all the ceremonies and stuff. It's basically, that's what it is.
So you have other characters. Each character is from a pueblo, a particular pueblo of the 19. Do they have their own names from their own pueblo?
I mean, I really didn't say like the blind archers are from Cochiti or the recon watchmen are from Wingate, but the intention was to do that, but I'm just gonna let it flow how it is and just really let it fall into place.
Like the archers, they have, the names.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that very fascinating.
And it's very, I mean, like when we're working, like a lot of the titles, I used to never name the pieces, but now it's like I'm paying homage or honor like people that have passed on, and like a lot of they had really amazing names. So it's like a way of like, including them as well because they were part of education to spread the word.
And runners are very important in the Pueblo culture.
The what?
Runners.
Oh yeah.
Very important.
Mm-hmm.
And to drummers, another thing that Coach D has.
Our dad was a drummer. Yeah, he is a drum maker as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
We could talk about like
That was just amazing, like having a family that was 100% supportive and they were artists themselves, and it's just cool to be immersed in that whole life growing up. And I now realize that, like I'm so lucky to do that, and I try to share with all my friends, invite them to do collaborations and invite them to shows, be a part of it as models or whatever. Like we're all getting together and we're all learning how to do these setups. So now, like when we do shows like this, they're like, "Oh my God, you guys have a crew that does exactly this," like and like no, it's just our team. Like we never studied that, but we just learned it. And the more you do, the more anybody's gonna learn. So it's like it's really cool to have the crew and have them all tight together like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Virgil, you said the film is in production. Can you tell us the progress? Where are you at in terms of the production of the film? I knew you were making it, wanted to make it. I'm dying to see it.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing too because of the companies that we're working with. You can't talk about it, but it took me 22 years to find a production company that I felt comfortable with. Because there's a lot of people that I met like Marvel and DC Comics, even James Cameron. I met all these people, and it's just like, we need to see your script, we need to see this, and I'm like, no, like I'm doing it with baby steps and making sure everything is protected and trademarked. And finally, I found a person that happened to collect my artwork, and he said like, I want to help you do this. And okay, cool. We had a lot of meetings. He brought all his executives and directors to. They wanted me to go to LA first to like start doing the process, but I said is it possible to get them here to Santa Fe, and I'm going to take them exactly where all the atrocities happened. And they did. They flew them out here, so it was awesome to have them come here, and they understood everything. I took them to the Pueblo. I showed them who we are. But yeah, it could go in 5 years, 3 years, or 10 years. I don't know, but it's in the works, and that's why I'm like moving to LA now to start working on that. And it's just insane how fast that industry is. But we just want to make sure that all the intellectual property is protected.
We have a question up here.
Hey Virgil, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Listen, I have a question concerning the controversial history that's happened in the plaza. Do you address that in your videos or in your work as to exactly what happened there at that time? You know how they're taking it off, the list had to be taken down. I was really glad that happened because I was part of it.
Yeah.
You know, I was glad it was down.
No,
But I was just wondering how you integrate it.
I haven't yet, but I do support it. I'm like more of a person that will educate through art.
Mhm.
So I mean, I support the protests and everything, but I'm just a person that it just, I got to keep my mind calm and then work it a different way. But it was kind of cool because I did meet with the people of the Entrada that were a part of it. And it was at some wedding, and they said this guy is the guy that leads the Entrada. So we went off in the corner, and I told him, I said, like, he said, I went to your talk at the New Mexico History Museum, and he goes, I understand what you're talking about. And he goes, but I don't see you yelling or crazy, posts on Instagram or whatever. And I just said, well, he goes, what do you have to say to me? And I said, okay, well, imagine everything like your people, your blood, your ancestors were here in New Mexico. We came, or somebody else came, did the same thing, turned the table on them. And I said, like, I know it's not us that it took place, or your right now, right, or ancestors that happened, but you can still feel it, and like for you to celebrate the genocide of our people. I said, imagine like if somebody did that to you, like how would it make you feel? Like, would you change your mind about? Would you be protesting? Would you want this obelisk there? Like, tell me how you would think. And he goes, well, now looking at it that way, I think of it completely different. So if there's ways to solve it and like to come to a peaceful ending, and that's like why I'm doing this, because like in the end, it's a prayer, it's a movie. So you have to have a hero's journey, a tale of like how it all comes together, the craziness of it, the killings, and then goes back to a peaceful way. And like we are mixed as well, so it's like we have to show everything, and that's like the ending of everybody living in peace. So you see Dahu, a lot of her pictures have her having a rose in her mouth, still blindfolded, but that's a symbol of peace with everybody living together. And like even the Recon Watchmen down here, I wanted to do a much different colors and textures and the glaze colors on them to really talk about no matter how different our skin colors are, we're still all the same. So I used the same silhouette of the Recon Watchmen, but I gave them different colors.
I just want to mention one more thing. I don't know if you recognize me, but I was teaching at Coach de Pueblo School. And so I had your book, The Revolution, and I was showing it to my students because I was teaching art. And I was so glad that the kids were going, really? Some Coach D? Yes, it's from Coach D. So, very proud.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Virgil, I'm just curious, as a little boy in Cochiti, did the elders talk a lot about the Pueblo Revolt? Did your family want the kids to learn about it? How did you become so engaged in it since it's not taught in schools?
I just think it's like when I listen to messaging in my head, and like I'll tell you a quick story. Are we on time?
Yeah.
Are you guys okay?
Yeah.
Working with Clay, I learned how to make the storytellers, which Coach D is known for. And the reason why our people made storytellers was because that's how our voices were, our language, and everything we know were passed down during storytelling time. But I learned it, and I don't know if I got bored because of ADHD or something, and I started creating all these other characters, painting them completely different than what I was taught. And a family friend, Robert Gallegos, a dealer out of Albuquerque, would make buying trips to Cochiti. So he would come maybe 3 times a year and buy the pieces from us. And he said, like, who's teaching this kid how to do these types of figures with all these crazy paintings on them? And my parents just said he's experimenting, we support him, and they said, please bring him down to my showroom in Albuquerque. We went down there for the first time, and it turned out we walked in and we just about passed out, my parents and I, just because we walked into that room and he had the largest collection of historic Cochiti figurative pottery, and all my pieces looked exactly like them. So my parents were like, come outside. They pulled me outside. Like, am I in trouble? What's on? But they just said, like this, we didn't teach you any of this. It's the Clay Mother talking to you and through you. So remember this time. And I was like about 16, so at that point I figured out what I was going to do for the rest of my life was to make sure that it's not going to die out and to bring back social commentary into it. So a lot of the elders, when they first see my pieces, they're like, oh, this is cool, but like the aliens, what are these? So I show them, like now that I have the resources of pictures and digital imagery, that I can show them the historic work, because most people don't know about him. And they depicted all of the people that were brought in by the newly laid railroads. So a lot of different people were coming in here, and like entertainment, operas, or the circus sideshows. So all of the Cochiti people that were, they see new people, they make caricatures of them in clay. So it's kind of like they're creating their own newspapers and on the hot topics, the whole timeline. So if you look at the historic works, so if you look at the historic works, it's like a book, it's like a newspaper. So following that as it, and then they understood it. They're like, oh, I get it now. Like a lot of you guys probably see my more S&M, very racy kind of stuff as well. But when you look at the historic works, my work is way lame compared to it. Because they depicted all of like the prostitution, all these like money, and like they wrote on them in Spanish. So it was a lot more, way more, like I said, like I was very lame compared to it. So they understood it because it was our ancestors doing it. So now I have their 100% support. So now they're like, okay, so I'm telling a story about Virgil, but that's basically it.
And I want to encourage everybody to look up some of the historic Cochiti storyteller figures, the monos. If you guys haven't seen them, they're absolutely incredible. These kind of diminutive objects, but from the 1880s and 1890s, but they'll be like a little guy with a kind of stylized tie and some kind of cockamamie hat on. And I love the idea that there's been an observation right at the outside for a very, very long time. And your work comes out of something that's not just traditional, but now, there's material culture that's lasted for a long time telling this story. And it was really exciting in that History Colorado show to see some of the really old work, 1,000 years old, from 140 or so years ago, next to Virgil's work, the contemporary work, and you're like, dang, this is a long, long line. Virgil is, sitting on the shoulders of giants.
Oh, definitely. I mean, like when you put some of the traditional work under a microscope and look at the historic work and current ones, we're still using the same material from the same clay vein, the same white clay slip. It has a little crackle in it when you look at it under that close. It's amazing, and that's what Robert Gallegos that taught me of how to. He was like, this is amazing what you're doing because it's the same thing from the 1800s. And yeah, it's a lot harder to do it that way. And like another, I want to point out Jared. So did he leave?
Just left.
He's a Navajo plotter a young Navajo plotter. I encourage you guys to look at his work. Amazing young dude that he's doing kind of the same thing I am to like really start bringing in all different types of shapes and like experimenting with, but using the traditional clay. I don't know. It's just like I don't want it to die out, and the only way I'm going to feel successful is like when I jet out of this world, that I have passed this tradition on to my nieces and nephews or people in the Pueblo.
One last question, and then everybody feel free to ask Virgil questions while we have wine and snacks and cochitinis, which Virgil invented for this. Okay.
What?
So I'd like to say that I have the privilege of living on Cochiti Pueblo, so thank you. And when I arrived at Meow here in Santa Fe, the first thing I saw was film by Virgil. So if you would like to see what I call a trailer, right at the front of Meow Wolf, at the entrance, there's one.
That's right.
And then when you go in, there's one of all the 19 Pueblo figures, and it was fantastic. I stayed for the whole film.
Awesome.
I just wanted to let people know.
Yeah.
From your film that you're doing, this is my question, I'm concerned being at Cochiti Pueblo about essentially colonialism in the present day, and the dam, and the nuclear toxins coming down the Rio Grande.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if your future part of your film or how you might bring in all of those issues.
It will be mentioned just because of what you're talking about, the dam, Cochiti Pueblo. Yes, they tore it up, and what happened, like, the reason why we use red clay, we used to use white clay. And what happened when they built a dam, they gutted the whole thing, so they destroyed all resources of the white clay. So that's no longer available. So now, like, we have to use the red clay. But yeah, of course, it's gonna be mentioned. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay, and I'm supposed to make an announcement that today, from 5 to 8, and if the person who gave me this is here, you feel free to say more. There is a, why don't you say it, about it's Indigenous Women Protection fundraiser. Are you not the person who told me about it? No. Okay. Is that person still here?
I think she left.
Okay, anyway, there is something going on at 728 Canyon Road called Wings of Action, and I'll just read it to you. It's to bring awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives in New Mexico, and for a documentary film they're making called She Cried That Day, a story about the brave women on the front lines of this devastating crisis. It's a Neptune event space, 728 Canyon Road, today from 5 to 8. And so take a picture of this card and go if you can. I'm gonna put it right
Here's
here.
a quick clip of like when we're firing these big pieces, the raku firing down in Cuernavaca, Mexico. They're the only ones that I found that have kilns that have these resources to do raku fire. But all these pieces in here were done the same way. Because usually raku fire is like maybe a foot tall. That would be large, but of course we're trying to go bigger again. But it's kind of exciting to work with it. It's like, it took me maybe like a year and a half to develop these pieces. And now that I've learned 3D modeling, so I incorporate that as well. But it's just it's a fun thing to try out. And like a lot of the process videos you can see on my Instagram is where I'm most active on. It's just Virgil Ortiz, so you can see more there. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.